canceling student debt and $15 an hour minimum wage. Besides that, right now, we definitely need $2,000 a month until we get through this COVID crisis. Too many people have lost their homes, too many people have lost their jobs. There are almost 100 million people in this country who are either uninsured or underinsured, and it was exacerbated by COVID. And the same hell that we're catching right now during COVID, we were catching before COVID. The $15 an hour minimum wage is the bull. Economists say that if the minimum wage had kept up with inflation, it would be closer to $25 an hour. You can't live a thriving, good life. You always have to worry about where your next meal is going to come from. How you're going to be able to pay your house note. How you're going to be able to pay your rent. So that $15 an hour minimum wage is very important. Canceling student debt is both racial justice and it's also women's justice. Black women hold the largest amount of student debt in the United States of America. So we can't student debt. We have $15 an hour, canceling student debt, and Medicare for all. As a hegemon nation, Medicare for all is a moral right.
I would like to ask my wife Renee and my son Brian to stand up because the answer reflects them. So stand up and say hi. Thank you guys. This is an important issue. And the question was, what's the one thing you're going to do as a congressman, a freshman congressman, to help the district? And the very first thing I'm going to do is pay attention to constituent service. Provide a level of service that you haven't seen. When you talk about things you need, like getting Social Security, getting responses from the federal government, and then also working with the building trade. We have George Edwards here to make sure that we help create the jobs needed here to repair our aging infrastructure. And the reason I introduced my family is because this pandemic has exposed one thing. It's exposed that the economy is changing. We need someone like myself who has worked in the healthcare field for the past 15 years to bring to the table ideas that will help our children adjust and adapt to this new economy. And we'll make sure you have the tools to do that. Thank you.
I'm about the business of saving lives, creating jobs. I can't. I'm about the business of saving lives, creating jobs, and establishing an intervention in post-pandemic. This is very, very serious, ladies and gentlemen. You give us a minute to respond. I could go up and down. I can sit here for about a couple of days telling you what I would like to do.
Come on,
bringing together people in the process of understanding why we're not getting it done today. We need to understand that before this pandemic, we had problems that we were not solving, and nobody seems to have the answer. I want to make sure that we have an infrastructure in place that is going to respond to the common needs of people in this city and this region. And I will do everything that I can. I've proven it by returning hundreds of millions of dollars to my district and around the city. And I will work hard to do the same thing here. Thank you very much.
All right.
Gannett Congressional District has some of the richest and poorest communities in the country. Having that been said, what do you see as the two biggest challenges for the 11th Congressional District?
We're going to start with John Lawrence Jr. Two biggest problems. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when you're in a hole, what do you say? You say, stop digging. The culture of the leadership around Northeast Ohio is one that keeps digging. They say get a steam shovel so you can dig a bigger hole. Now we need to understand that solving the problem will begin with education, and that is an important element in this over the long haul. And the short haul is to continue to create jobs that will help people to sustain healthy lives.
The biggest issue facing this district between the wealth disparity in this district represents the wealth disparity in this country. And the way we have to address that is to attack poverty. And we attack poverty by attacking the social disparities of health. We have some of the best health facilities in the world right here in this district. Yet we can't service everyone that lives in this district with that quality health care. And when I talk about social disparities of health, it's the offshoots. It's poor housing. It's lead paint. It's a poor education. It's poor transportation. We have a great COVID solution, but we can't get there to get our shot. We have to understand that and provide real solutions so that we can take our generation and our district to be a model for the country. Thank you.
It's hard to just focus on two, because everything is so interconnected. Social, economic, environmental, racial, political, all of these things are interconnected. So it depends on what your vantage point is from. In the 11th version of the team, we have extreme wealth and we have extreme poverty. If you are among the poor, the working poor, and very middle class, then it's jobs and healthcare and safety. I believe that this nation and our district should be judged by what we do for the least of these. And so since poverty, income, and wealth inequality is a very big goal, during this pandemic, the ultra wealthy in this country has amassed wealth into the trillions of dollars. But meanwhile, back in the hood and on the streets, we gotta beg people for a $15 an hour minimum wage. We gotta beg people to give you $2,000 a month until the pandemic is over. So we have to deal with income and wealth inequality and then Medicare for all. We can't have any other thing unless you have your health. Your health is your wealth. No more co-pays, deductibles.
These are issues that I have a track record of addressing. Poverty and racism as a public health crisis. When we talk about justice, we cannot forget that many of the situations around this economic wealth gap are results of racism as a public health crisis. The legislation that I was able to pass unanimously with bipartisan support addresses transportation, education, criminal justice reform, health care, and access to quality of life, living things. So these are things that I have a proven track record of dealing with bipartisan support, might I add, during these most polarizing, divisive, and challenging times. So if we're talking about legislators that can get things done during difficult times, then I am that person. We need someone who is able to lead and speak truth to power so that we can address these issues and not just talk about our aspirations, but put things into actualization. And I have done that. So thank you.
All right, so I was asked about what are the two biggest things that are actually impeding on progress in this district. Number one, right now we're in the most populous city in this entire district. And this is one of the most impoverished. In fact, it's one of the most segregated. I've heard some of my colleagues say this is a very diverse district, they say, right? It's so diverse that none of that wealth is nowhere here, is it? I know everybody see it. I keep saying it. Where is that wealth actually being distributed? There is a wealth inequality gap. There is a lack of effort. We do need to highlight the fact that we have gatekeepers, like what we saw, we're gonna be real, like what we saw in Ward 4, where we saw your dollars actually not going to the people and they was going right to some councilman's hands. Oh, people don't like that. No, I'm gonna speak the truth. Why? Because that is wrong with this district. That nobody want to talk about the truth. Nobody want to actually just say that. So what's so bad about it? We got human security issues. We got kids dying out here. Kids are dying. They're being killed every day. And nobody want to talk about it, right? No, but Tariq Shabazz says, I'm going to fight for you because I know nobody was fighting for me when I was a kid. Or at least I didn't feel that way. So I'm going to make sure y'all feel like you feel violent. because I know you matter. Thank you.
Everything we talk about are symptoms. I've been out in the streets when we fought for $50 an hour and then some powerful people blocked it. I've been in the streets that we fought, we got a new law for removing poisonous lead because those from the streets made it happen and others took credit for it. I was here all the way back in 1984 when someone got killed by a cop because he had a squeegee. I'm the one who led the fight when it comes to reforming the police when it came to the second round of child abuse shooting when Gloria Pointer and Trina Middleton was killed in Glenville. I've got a record, but it's structural racism has created inequities in healthcare, criminal justice, housing, and economics. Until we understand the power structure and using the power of Congress to deal with economics and healthcare, until we understand structural racism and how to attack the foundations, then we will continue to fight against the symptoms. Thank you.
I'm going to preface the next question by just one word, Georgia. Georgia. As it relates to voting, what would you do or work on in Congress to help protect people's right to vote?
HR 1 is voting rights in Congress right now in front of the Senate. First of all, we got to get rid of the filibuster. And so the bottom line is what's going on across this country needs to stop. They are afraid of the browning of America. White supremacists are fighting because they see what's happening. And we have to use our influence and our power in the streets to change from a federal level what's going on across the state. It doesn't make sense to have, for example, one drop box in a big county like Alabama. They're trying to stop us, and it's because they're afraid of the future. We have to recognize that and make sure that things like the filibuster doesn't stop us from being able to bring back voting rights laws. And we got to continue to fight in the streets. Stacey Abrams is showing us in Georgia what we got to do in every state. Don't be afraid of it. Be able to go in the streets like our forefathers did, and be able to argue and fight and if it happens, to die for the right to vote. Thank you.
So we're talking about HR 1 and HR 4. How many more of our rights that keep getting stolen and get impeded on? So right now, I want everybody to see something that you see a stark contrast between me and all my colleagues here. You see, I'm a little bit younger than them. Not that much. They got a little wisdom, but I'm a little younger than them. I got a lot of fighting. I got a lot of fire in me. So we got to walk on the streets and we got to demand our rights. We're going to demand our rights. We're going to fight for our people because there's no reason why we have in some states that people can't vote because they got a felony before. You tell them they're being politically silenced for the rest of their life, they can't vote. They can't even say what, they can't demand any justice. That's unacceptable. That is what we call a democratic deficit in America. You cannot call yourself a democracy if you are actively impeding and suppressing the right to vote of our people. And you know what people specifically they're impeding on? People that look like all of you. People that look like me. People that look like minorities all over this country. That's why, as your next congressman, we don't have to talk about exactly what bill it is, but you know what? When I walk away from you, when it's time to go vote on that bill, and I haven't actually been the one writing the drafting, did you know I'm going to always have your best interest at heart? I can't speak about every one of my colleagues, but I can tell you 100% sure right now. You know I will fight for you and I will make that right vote. And I will make the stand always to improve our right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. When you talk about the right to vote, as the chairwoman of the Democratic Party, this is something that I have a tremendous amount of experience in. Despite not being the most populous county in this state, give it up for yourselves because we delivered the most votes, Democratic votes in this state, regardless. So we went from presidency to precincts. We delivered the most votes in this state. So give it up for yourselves. What we need to do is make Election Day a national holiday. We need to automatically register 18-year-olds when their 18th birthday comes, register them to vote. We need not purge people because they have not participated in the process. And we need to make sure everyone is aware when elections are occurring, because as it currently stands, during local election years, the participation is extremely low. As it relates to the police, for the Justice for George Floyd Policing Act, listen, it is no question. We need to stop these no-knock norms, revise this whole qualified immunity situation, and get rid of AR-15. All right. Thank you.
Ward 7, justice is never a destination, it's a journey. And so I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have had to say, especially Senator Johnson, on the bills that are on the federal level. But as 3 of my colleagues here, we serve, 4 of my colleagues, including myself, we serve on the state level of government. And we gotta not forget state legislatures. There are 250 bills right now all across this country that are aimed at carving away at the rights that we have already gained. So we must know that once we fight for something, we're not done fighting with it, because there's always going to be somebody else trying to chip away. What is happening over there in Georgia is happening over here in the great state of Ohio. I ran for Secretary of State in 2014, sacrificing my last term as a state senator to stand up against Republicans in this very state that were trying to chip away at our voting rights. You know, Cuyahoga County may have delivered the most Democratic votes, but we had a very low voter turnout in 2020. Hello, somebody. And so we got to make sure that people get out to vote on a regular basis. Primaries, presidential elections, city council races, who we put in positions of power matter. And this is not just a one-time deal. In Cuyahoga County, we can do a lot better. When we have a low voter turnout and during a presidential election, that says that something is wrong, that people are giving up on the system. Hello, somebody.
Voting suppression is a terrible thing that's occurring in every state in Georgia. When they first asked Georgia, I thought voting and then I thought gun violence. Nina Turner mentioned the amount of laws to suppress our right
Why do I
to
feel
vote.
like I'm falling asleep?
And just know that there's only 2 laws against stopping and curbing gun violence. And that sends a terrible message. I was the Secretary of State Democratic nominee in 2002. And I stood as a Democratic nominee to oppose voter suppression, even to a point on election day when I and Representative Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones went down to get a court order to keep the polls open for an extra 2 hours. They turned voters away and said, you can't vote right now because we're not ready. And we need to also make sure that when everyone comes to vote, that you can go to the polls and register to vote that same day. And by the way, you can't do that now, but you can go buy a gun in the same day and shoot up somebody. That's got to change.
I was an Obama delegate to the Democratic National Convention. President Obama, in a state that has 88 counties, won in 18 of those counties. It gives you a drastic look at how important our voting and participation in the system has to do. But what was inspiring about that campaign was the fact that they continued to give people a reason to believe that they have a stake in the future. Now we have to get out and vote. But we have to, after the voting is over, we got to do something. We got to deliver for our people. We got to stand up no matter who it is, what party it's from, or who it is. Congressman Stokes used to say that there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. There are permanent interests. What the black community has got to define is what are your permanent interests? And how are those permanent interests going to move forward the life that we're looking for and the sustainability of our families for a better tomorrow?
With the most recent situations that have occurred in Georgia and Colorado, like Brother Tompkins reflected earlier, as a congressional candidate, what is your position on gun control from the federal level?
Yeah, that would have.
But we definitely got to close the gun show loophole. And weapons that are made for war should not be on our streets. The Second Amendment is there, but it's not absolute. And we got too many elected officials that kowtow to the NRA. If Sandy Hook didn't move, you know, we got babies dying in our streets on a regular basis in this city, in this nation on a regular basis. And you have elected officials, both on the state and the federal level of government, who will not budge even when babies are dying. So the Congress, since the Democrats have control, and will have control at least for the next 2 years, we need to go in there as Democrats and do this thing and correct this problem once and for all. No weapons for mass destruction should be in our streets. We need to close the gun show loophole. We need to make sure that background checks are tighter. And we need to absolutely make sure that as a community we deal with the proliferation of illegal guns. It is both. And legal gun owners do not want folks out there with guns who should not have them. And so that is why we need all of those people to come together and stand up to the gun lobby that has bought off too many elected officials in this country.
So again, starting where I left off, we need to, again, move the AR, the automatic rifles off of the streets. We need universal background checks, obviously, and we need to make sure it's not easier to buy a gun than it is to register to vote. I have to give credit where credit is due. So listen, as it relates to that, we've been talking about this since Columbine. This has been an issue for 20 years, so we all know the problem. What we need are leaders that are willing to confront it, and that is where you find a leader in me. I have spoken of an issue where people have been afraid to use their voice to speak on our behalf. I fought for contracts to make sure minority businesses got their appropriate share. And I use that same type of courage, collaboration, and consensus building to get legislation passed around these gun laws that have been long overdue. We need a courageous leader, and that is me.
All right, so I'm gonna get a little more personal about this whole situation because gun violence actually affected me more than just it was something in my backyard. At 16 years old, I remember when I got to small education, verbal education, and a young man put a firearm out on me. He had to be the same age as me. Put it right in my face and said, I'm gonna kill you right now. Broad daylight. And you know what? All I could think about at that very moment was, what does my life mean if it's all gonna end over something as silly as a minor discussion right there? But then I want to tell you, I think about something else a little bit differently too. It's easy to just say we're just going to get the guns off the streets. But are we talking about removing the conditions that led to those people picking those guns up and start shooting each other, robbing each other, stealing, and doing all those other things? So 100%, I'm going to fight to make sure we close and make tighter loopholes for gun reform. 100%. But if we're not talking about establishing equity, all that other stuff is out the window. It doesn't mean anything at all. Because guess what they're going to do in these streets? They're going to do something else. We got to treat the trauma these kids are facing, the adults they're facing. We got a literacy rate of 66% of adults. Think about that. We got a lot more to fight than it's just gun reform. These things are all so interconnected. It's a series of issues that's caused this very bad situation. And I'm going to fight for all of them. Thank you.
Gun violence in our neighborhood. 100 people a year, over 100 people a year get murdered just in the city of Cleveland. We do need sensible gun law changes at the federal level. There has not been a federal partnership with the local governments and the state government that needs to be brought back. We need to be able to close the loopholes. We need to be able to research gun violence that no longer they won't allow us at the federal level. We need to be able to pass laws, get rid of the filibuster, to be able to stop the ability of folks buying guns and then sell them in our neighborhood. Now, gun violence is simple, but nevertheless, we have to deal with it. It's complicated. We have to deal with behavioral health issues associated with it. Behavioral health is addiction and mental health together. That's behavioral health. We also have to be able to deal with the problem of poverty and what it means I have fought as Cleveland City Council to get City Hall budget together. And they just have not done what was necessary to come into this community, these communities like us, and deal with true gun violence by using former gang members and whether I have to stop that. But there is so much more we could be doing, even in these cities as well.
Seems like every year we have an issue of gun violence. Just in this district, Tamir Rice shot and killed. Every year, a new Tamir Rice happens, and we cry outrage. I think what we need to do is obviously close loopholes. We have to utilize technology so that we can trace where these guns come from and then hold those people accountable. We have the technology, blockchain technology, to do that. So if we know where the guns come from, we can stop it right at its source. And we talk about mental health. There was a loophole, and it still is, where if you go to buy a gun, you just have to say, are you mentally ill, yes or no? And you say yes, or you say no. And if you say no, you get your gun. There's no way to check that. And I introduced legislation when I was a state legislator to close that loophole. You know where it went because Republicans were in control? It went nowhere. I'm going to Congress to serve under Team Biden and reintroduce that legislation so we get real reform and close those loopholes. Thank you.
Repeat the question.
What is your position on gun control from the federal level?
The federal government has a responsibility to ensure that all Americans are safe. That's fact. And so all of the shootings that we've seen in Columbine, areas, if you look at Tamir Rice, as my colleague talked about, in the case Columbine, you had individuals who had a demented mind. In the case of Tamir Rice, you had an individual that was not properly vetted by the system. So you can't point the finger at everybody who has a responsibility for our safety based on people who didn't do the job to make sure that that individual was vetted properly. So that would resolve the problem. So we have to make sure at the federal level that we ensure, my time is running, that the process is followed in terms of background checks and in terms of making sure that people who are safe don't have access to guns. Thank you.
Can we hold our comments until the candidates are finished, please? And if you do have a phone, could you make sure it's on mute so that the person next to you can hear our candidates? Thank you.
I think we all know someone who's working 2 jobs to make ends meet, and all the candidates have touched on it in some regards. What is your position on raising the minimum wage, and do you support organized labor?
We'll start with Senator Neal.
Raise the wage, simple as that. For 12 years, the federal minimum wage has not increased. It's at $7.25. Nobody can live off of that. Even if you're single, you can't live off of that. And God knows if you have a family, you cannot live off of that. If I were in Congress right now, I would definitely support the PRO Act, which does away with right to work states in this country, allows people to organize, and a plethora of other things. I can tell you, as somebody who served in the Ohio legislature at the time that Senate Bill 5 came creeping through our state, and not only did I vote the right way in the Ohio Senate, I got into the streets helping to collect signatures to overturn Senate Bill 5, and thank God that we did in the great state of Ohio. I was just in Bessemer and also Birmingham, Alabama, standing side by side with our Amazon workers who are trying to unionize here with SEIU and a whole number of other folks. What I will say, and I know that Senator Johnson is going to say this when he got up here, Working side by side with labor is a very important thing. It's not just about going to meetings and gatherings, it's who is in the streets with the people who are fighting for those rights. So $15 an hour minimum wage and increasing labor unions across the country will increase the wages of families. Thank you.
Yes, I support a pathway to the $15 minimum wage. I think it's also important that we recognize that that's only part of the solution. What we need to make sure is that we are indexing our minimum wage annually so that it keeps up with the median income, to ensure that we don't find ourselves back in this situation 12 years from now. So it's important that we fight for 15 in a smart way. Additionally, I also support the PRO Act, and I'm proud to say that I have the support of over a dozen unions here that have endorsed my candidacy because I have been in the churches working with them side by side, not just going to meetings, but making sure and brokering agreements with the business community to ensure that they have jobs. So yes, I support the fight for 15, and yes, I support our unions, and I'm proud to say the majority of unions have been supporting me. Thank you.
So as your next congressman, I do 100% support $15 minimum wage. Why? Because again, nobody should be giving and devoting so much of their time and their effort to their life into a job, into a corporation that doesn't care anything about them, they can't even take care of their family. As I say again, we are one of the most impoverished districts in this entire country. So yes, a $15 minimum wage is doing an immense job to actually improve the status of our people who are living here. But again, I say again, that's not the only thing we have to do. We're not truly talking about equity. We're not talking about anything at all. My colleague, she did say that there's something more things that need to be added in terms of indexing. But I also think, again, we need to be talking about reparations. I can't think of any other way to say accountability and equity. The reparations for the black community in this country. And then we also talk about increasing grants, so individuals can have more home ownership, and so they can also build their businesses up. That is the kind of congressman I want to be for you. And I may not have all the political connections that some of my colleagues may have, but please don't ever misinterpret that as a lack of my ability to handle what the burden is required of a congressman. Because every day of my life, for 1,826 days, I put my boots on every day for the United States Navy, and I fought for this country. So let me fight for you again. Thank you.
I want you guys, you can remember when we tried in the streets of Cleveland, I'm putting $15 minimum wage on the ballot. I want you to try to remember who was actually in the streets trying to make that happen. How many up here was actually in the streets fighting for that particular clause we put on our city ballot? And whose name was on the legislation and city council to make it happen, but we got blocked by powerful people. It's about doing what you think needs to be done. That's why some folks don't support me, because I am not part of the establishment. I fought against the Q Arena money not going to black folks and other poor folks. I ain't gonna get there, what's his name's money. I fight for you. So it's also about the unions. It's about standing with the unions, being able to do that. But at the same time, reminding them about the apprenticeship program that don't have enough black folks in it. When they all get on the streets, not have enough black folks. Reminding them that and being their allies at the same time. I support the PRO Act.
Definitely support the $50 minimum wage. It is a must. When my wife and I owned a gas station convenience store right here in the district, corner of Broadway and McCracken, we paid above minimum wage. We talk about holding 2 jobs, people are holding 3 and 4 jobs just to make ends meet. And it is just a crime and a shame. As far as unions, I've been a union member over 20 years of my life. In fact, Flannery's came over to Cleveland for opportunity because my great-grandfather saw his brother at age 16 get crushed in the coal mine, working for the company store. There was no union. Unions provide protections and a guide. And dedicated my entire adult working life working with unions. I worked for Taft-Hartley Labor Trust in providing affordable health care to their union members. They had to sacrifice wages so they can keep their benefits. We can do better, we have to do better, and I'll be the candidate to make sure that happens. Thank you.
John Brown,
Everybody needs a raise. And that's just the way it is. Bottom line, period. Everybody needs a raise. But 4117 of the Ohio Revised Code covers labor unions. Is extremely important. I remember on the floor when SB 5 was brought up for a vote from the Senate. I know that night, if you heard me talking, you could look and the wallpaper was beginning to melt off the walls. I had a collective bargaining agreement from the city of Cleveland, and they were talking about management's rights. And they were talking about they needed help downstate to make sure this, that, and the other happened. Well, they need to learn how to manage. They need to learn how to inspire people with an opportunity beyond $15 an hour. We need to be promoting entrepreneurism. We need to be promoting job skills and career ladders that's going to move people from where they are to where they need to go. And the only way you're going to achieve that, ladies and gentlemen, is by having people who understand the process of making it happen. Thank you.
I know we've all seen those horrific photos on TV of children in cages along the border, and this is a 30-year issue. What is your position on immigration, and how would you like to address it if elected to Congress?
let's start with Brian Fine.
All of us are here right now because we're descendants of immigrants. The Flannerys came over and escaped an environment in Ireland where you were a citizen at will. Meaning if they didn't think you were worthy, they could shoot you on the spot. He escaped on a ship. Took a long time to get over to New Orleans. Got a job working in the canals. And got his way up, found our way up to Cleveland. And the reason he did that and sacrificed his life was to provide a better opportunity. And that's what we all deserve. So I support a humane path to citizenship and treatment once they come over the border and get that treatment. Now the thing is, what's happening since the whole Trumpism has happened is there's been a mad Russian flood at the borders, and we need to sort that out, and we will, and provide a clear path and a safe path and a humane path. I'm for it.
Well, I will say not everybody came over here.
Watch out, man. Wait a minute. Who you with?
But I understand where Brother Fleming is going. I just have to pause for a minute. Let you know that some of our ancestors were forced over here. Hello, somebody. And we don't share a nation where we are not treated like equals still in the 21st century, but we're still working on that. Comprehensive immigration reform, absolutely. Dealing with DACA, absolutely.
That's what I'm talking
Dealing with the disparities in immigration, because we know that our Haitian sisters and brothers and some of our black folks from the diaspora are not treated the same when they come over here to the United States of America. We need to fix that, not have kids in cages, not separate them. And we must know that under many administrations, not just Republican administrations, if we're going to tell the truth, under many administrations, we have not done right in this country. We got to get it better. One thing that we do have to do is make sure that we have judges on the border too. The system is not designed enough to take in the influx. So definitely humane, just, comprehensive immigration reform, and dealing with the racial dynamics in the immigration reform system.
So first, I want to definitely say something to my colleague attorney. Definitely agree with everything she just said in terms of everybody did come here willingly. So let's not ever look past that right now when we talk about immigration. But now we're going to be talking specifically about DACA. How are we actually going to ensure a pathway to citizenship? I do believe I will work in conjunction with our President Biden to ensure that they actually have a pathway to citizenship. And we also need to be talking about some of the other things that isn't brought up enough. The human trafficking is still going on down there, right? Because how many of these people are being brought into this country to go do things they should not be doing and against their own will? That is modern day slavery today, right now, too, right? So we need to address those things specifically. And I do 100% agree with some of the things that I heard by some of my colleagues in terms of making sure that this border, that we actually create a presence so many people can come in of all ethnicities, of all nations. That's what this country is supposed to be based upon. I had the pleasure of serving in the Navy with people from all over the world. And I'll tell you what, there is nothing you can't do when you bring people together from all over this place, and we can do unimaginable things as a people. Thank you so much.
Well, let me say that, Senator Turner, we all say the same thing. My folks say no for the other side of the aisle. But I will say the Statue of Liberty is where we start. It is compassion. It is welcoming folks. But at the same time, not to have open borders just without fair rules and regulations. It's not just about our Mexican brothers and sisters in the triangle, as well as Haitian. It's about us being able to have rules that apply to everyone, but be fair and not be selective. So I support DACA. I believe we need a pathway to citizenship for the dreamers. Absolutely support that. I also believe we need day programs, because there's folks who live in Mexico who come over and do jobs in America that many folks don't want to do. But you have to have a day program. They can go back home, come back over the bridge, and they can work. We should be able to work that out and deal with the migrant children as well in a compassionate way. Compassion, I'm about supporting Biden administration in their approach and about making sure that we apply it fairly and with compassion. Thank you.
Cleveland is there are 107 different ethnic groups from all over the world that are here in Cleveland. If you look at their lineage, it goes back to where they were under similar situations and conditions. Now, I gotta go with the time. I'm focusing here involuntarily. I know everybody else, but the situation that we're looking at here is very serious. We need comprehensive reform so that there's a fair process, because America as a world leader has a responsibility to have processes that are consistent with our Constitution, and we don't always do that. We're not doing that all the time. So we got to work on that. I support DACA, but I would have to look at that with a fine-tooth comb to see what I want. So while I think that what I've seen I like, I'm going to do all I can to get the best deal possible. I'm sorry,
I do want to say this, and it is important that she spoke the words that she said. But it has also left me in a place of thinking about how this seat came about. It was drawn by the Honorable that everyone has said, but this is why this district was drawn, the way that it was drawn.
All right, we got everybody now, right? Okay. One last question, we'll bring it home. Everybody's heard about toilet seats that cost you $2,000 and overspending by the military. And there's been a big focus on why the military budget's out of whack and where those funds should go. So the question is, what position would you take on the reduction of the military, and if so, where would you shift those allocation dollars to?
We'll start with Brian Simon.
So military defense spending has gone through the roof with the Republican-controlled legislature, Republican president, Congress. And that certainly has to be looked at, and it has to be tightened up, and money needs to really obviously come back home into the district. The monies that, what's happened is since the Democrats have taken control, is now the Republicans are all crying poor mouth and becoming hawks on spending. And there isn't a fair appropriation to the communities back home, and that's where that money needs to go. It needs to support the social program, the infrastructure, and education, and healthcare in this district.
Next we go,
My granddaddy was in the service for 33 years. So I have a great deal of respect for people who serve our nation. But what we don't do good here in Northeast Ohio is we do a lot of pretending. Right? That budget is a source of opportunity because many jobs in the defense industry can come right here through NASA. And as the country is looking towards the future, there's an opportunity. Now, if anybody thinks that I'm going to stand here and tell you I like the fact that you're paying $800 for a toilet seat, you're dead wrong. What we need in the defense is a departmental intervention that is going to look at and compare market values with what is happening in the expenditures that is going through the Defense Department so that we can assure that our tax dollars are not wasted. And I'd be one of the first ones to look at what, if anything, can be done to do that through legislation or policy of the party.
So certainly support the reduction in military spending, and I think we need to spend the money towards education. We need to spend the money towards education. Our public school system is suffering. It is resulting in inequitable job opportunities. So there's a number of places. So education and infrastructure and training around entrepreneurship so that people can become their own employers, and it continues to empower and advance the economy. So that's how I would spend those dollars.
I want you to remember this number. We have a $1.3 trillion discretionary budget. And over 50% of that discretionary budget goes to the military-industrial complex. And I'm talking about contractors. So we can't get caught up in the foolishness about that creating jobs, because the type of jobs, the people who are being edified by that industry are the ultra wealthy who are using that to go across seas to kill other people's children. 720 billion of those dollars are within the military-industrial complex. Imagine what we can do with that money domestically, in terms of health care, in terms of environment, infrastructure reform, and education. Public, it is about political will. Last year, in the House of Representatives, Congress, led by Congresswoman Barbara Lee, just to cut that budget by 10%. And even in the House of Representatives that was controlled by Democrats, it failed to be cut by 10%. We are a hegemon nation. We spend more money on our military than the next 8 to 10 nations combined. So we need to cut that budget and use that money on the domestic side. That's true security right there.
First of all, let me acknowledge the highest leader in our Ohio Democratic Party, Andre Washington. He's the vice chair of the Ohio Democratic Party. Number 2 person in the party, and he was escorted here with Marcia Fugdes, so you got, you got some flowers there. Let me say that the military industrial complex is what Eisenhower told us about. It's not difficult for us to say we're going to cut the budget, but where are you spending to? We have to invest in our underutilized neighborhoods. That's education. That's dealing with the health inequities. And that deals with how to reform criminal justice. It's about changing the definition of public safety. It's about redistributing the money to be able to do with behavioral health and other professionals to help with public safety. We haven't been able to talk about that right now, but I'm going to stick that in because it's easy. Cut the budget because it's bloated. And let's bring it home and let's take care of those issues that impact us the most, dealing with structural racism and dealing with these inequities in our system, and being able to then bring more folks up, all of us up, to where we need to be. Thank you.
All right. So how many times everybody heard me say I was a U.S. Navy veteran? Probably at least 3 times, right? Thank you. I appreciate that so much. So listen, everything about that in terms of the military spending budget. Listen, as a person who served it, I'm gonna tell you right now, 100% we spend way too much on that military budget. I worked in production, so I know how we were spending money to purchase assets that we need to repair. And there's no reason why I've seen certain tools and certain other things that was valued at the amount that they were valued. But one of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit about more in the next 30 seconds is what my colleagues haven't talked about. How are you going to actually get that done? Well, last time I checked in Congress, you need committee assignments. So that's what I'm saying. I'm going to get into that Armed Services Committee, whether we're talking about the Way and Means Committee, any one of those committees that's talking about the appropriations, and we can go line by line in detail. Do we need to appropriate these amount of dollars here? Secondly, the operational budget is what they're talking about that's bloated. It's not the personnel budget. Now, I want to correct a lot of people in that aspect. We don't take enough care of the actual troops that we have. Do you know that in terms of veterans, we have 22 veterans that commit suicide a day? They served our country, they came back home, they did everything right, and they commit suicide because they don't have any of the tools that they need. And that's what I'm saying about those things right now. These are the things that aren't talked about enough. And I'm going to make sure I fight for that in those committee assignments. But people can't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I serve, so I know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Closing statements, 1 minute, 2 minutes per candidate. We'll start with Jeff Knight. Ground running, brother.
Okay, 2 minutes is time. All right, that feels like a long time. Let me say that this has been a wonderful experience. It's the first time that we have been together on the stage that wasn't virtual. It's about us being able to present to you who we are, what we are, and what we want to do. And I hope you look at not just how much money people will raise or how much establishment people are endorsing, but rather who can get the job done. Who actually understands your neighborhood because they actually walk in your neighborhood. Who understands that there's a connection between violence and poor health, and the connection between not having $15 an hour and being able to walk the street and not be afraid of getting shot. I don't want to take your guns away from you. Because y'all know y'all need y'all guns in y'all house. Because the police ain't showing up fast enough. You need some folks. I understand I can hit the ground running on Capitol Hill. I've been a legislator at both levels. I told you all that. But I understand the issues. What are my priorities? My priorities is about lifting our people up so that they can take care of their families. We want to be able to have a system that allows for our seniors to be taken care of. We haven't really talked about seniors tonight. When I was a councilman for 14 years, I walked into living rooms and I've seen poverty up close. I've touched it. I've seen mental illness up close. I've seen a place where there's foil all over the room because they're afraid of microwaves. I've been in the living rooms. I've seen it. I understand it. I want to take that to Capitol Hill, where the millionaires don't have a clue about what's going on in our neighborhoods. So I'm asking you, please support me to send me to Capitol Hill like you sent me to City Council and like you sent me to the State House. I'm ready, I'm proven, I'm prepared. Jeff Johnson for Congress, JeffJohnsonForCongress.com. Thank you very much for being here.
First, I want to say thank you to the Ward 7 Club for even inviting so many of my colleagues and myself out, because that's a huge thing right now. We're talking about in the middle of the pandemic still. And we got people come out here and actually see what these candidates are actually really talking about. But, now is the time, I got to say this now. I got nothing love for all my colleagues here, but I'm going to be your next congressman. That's I'm going to be your next congressman. So on August 3rd, make sure you vote for Tariq Shabazz, because that name will be on that ballot. And we will, you know that I will continue to fight for you. Like I fought like in the service. I'm going to continue that going on. I'm stuttering a little bit, but that's all right. I'm a man of the people, and that's what I'm asking to run for, to be a man of the people in the people's house for District 11. As I stated previously, we're going to fight for reparations. We're going to talk about Medicare for all, not just talk about it. We're going to make sure we actually get that independent in law. Because again, no human in this country should actually worry about their financial status, about whether or not they can even go to the doctor. That's absolutely horrendous and that's ridiculous. And we talking about that prison pipeline. And listen, I live in this county. I know all you live in this county too. We saw a prison pipeline being formulated in this county just recently. And then the pandemic, that's when they actually started lowering the amount of people that was in that prison, in those jails. I don't hear enough of that conversation talking about that. But again, so make sure you support Shabazz for Congress. Check out our website. If you already know who you support, that's fine. Remove your confirmation bias for just a second. Allow somebody new to come and step through. Because we got way too many career politicians. Maybe now it's time to do something. Maybe it's time to do something real big. Maybe it's okay to have a young person actually represent this district. Because guess what? In the Democratic Party, we got to start reaching more of those young people. That's right. Now, who do you think they're talking to those young people? Who do you think they're talking to those young people? I'm just asking that right now. Can they actually connect with them like I can connect with them? I can code switch real quick. Let's not get that mixed up. So I can talk to these young people, I can reach their hearts. I can get the rest of the vote. And listen, I'm ushering in a new age. I represent what the Democratic Party needs to be like. Fighting for our people. Tariq Shabazz for Congress, August 3rd. Thank you so much.
Not a career politician. What I do offer is I was an elected councilman, I was an elected state legislator. I've been in the private business for 15 years, working in healthcare, helping unions work out deals with big business. My number one priority when I get to Congress is going to be constituent service. It's something that we need to really pay attention. When members of Congress are in Washington, the lobbyists line up outside the door. But what we have to remember is that back home in the district, it's all of you that line up at the Congressman's door for help for services. And I will make that a number one priority. A number one priority. A number one priority. I look forward to continuing on this campaign trail. We will have fun. We'll talk the issues, but I also have to say, none of it matters if we don't end the filibuster. We can talk and pass all the legislation we want, but it'll get stalled over in the Senate. We really need to take our time to support Senator Sherrod Brown and call senators across the country to end the filibuster now. Thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, I want to thank Ward 7 for having me on tonight. I think that it's extremely important first to have an open situation where everybody has a mask. But we have a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen. I heard my colleagues talk about the fact of how this district was formed. Louis Stokes filed a lawsuit to create this district. And he took a stand because he recognized the permanent interest of people who look like him who were not being represented. Now, we've seen situations here where people have been abused. We've seen new laws like Stand Your Ground. We've seen where a kid was shot down. And there's almost a silent treatment. So many people and leaders don't say nothing. And you wonder why. Because maybe they don't understand our permanent interests. They don't think that a young person who is shot down and killed, or all the victims in the community, that they're experiencing creates these opportunities. Or they don't think about the fact that there's little economic opportunity. For me, I like to look at what I call a hot dog test. We spend billions of dollars in development, and people from this community can't even sell a hot dog. Now you know something's wrong with that. How much does it take to put a hot dog on the stove and boil it and sell a 50-cent hot dog for $5? We should not only be doing that, but we should be in e-commerce. And we should utilize the fact that we have a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame downtown. And we got so many young people here who rap and they do hip-hop. And they don't even have a path to an opportunity. This office is more than just going to Washington and shantying around. This office is about getting things done and using the bully-filled pulpit to serve people and change their lives. Vote for John Barnes. Mask up first, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward 7. This was indeed beautiful. You know, on the Underground Railroad, Cleveland was known as hope. Coming through here was the restoration of hope. And so I am here because you are here. I am running because I believe that hope is an action word. It is not just my service in City Hall with Mayor Michael White, or being a Cleveland City Councilwoman, or working for the Cleveland Municipal School District, or being a college professor at Cuyahoga Community College where futures begin, or being the chair for party engagement side by side with David Pepper, or being a delegate twice for President Barack Obama, hello somebody, or running for Secretary of State, or traveling this nation, taking my district with me, standing side by side with people who are suffering in the same way that some of our people are suffering in this district. I am here because you are here. I am running because you are here. And my number one interest, navigating all that I've learned and seen, is to be able to serve you on this destination of hope. See, Medicare for All is about changing material conditions. Increasing the minimum wage is about changing material conditions. Educating our children is about changing material conditions. Taking care of our elderly is about changing material conditions. Doing away with the criminal justice system that sees black and brown people somehow as different is about changing material conditions. That is why I was able to even work with our conservative Republican governor to create the Ohio Task Force on Community and Police Relations when that sad day happened in the state of Ohio. If you elect Senator Nina Turner, you are electing somebody that will continue the justice journey and create an opportunity to continue to serve this great district. NinaTurner.com. Vote for Nina Turner on August the 3rd. Thank you.
I'm going to begin where I usually start, and that is my journey into politics, how I got here. I found myself in my first city council meeting because I was the youngest homeowner on my street. I wanted to know where I would leave my neighbors to stay in it's because they want to complain about something that has happened in the past, but I had the vision and foresight to think about something that might happen in the future. I quickly learned there was a volunteer organization that would provide evacuation routes, but something gnawed in my spirit because there was a gentleman that represented my community and said, every meeting without fail, all is well in Ward 5. But much like the conditions we're living in now, all was not well. So rather than complain, I decided to do the thing that I believe in, which is be the change you want to see. So I threw my name in the hat and I ran for city council. And I continued to go to the meetings, and while attending those meetings, I cultivated relationships with the administration, and they took notice, and they said to me, if you need help out there, let us know. Well, as you can imagine, our neighbors were very vocal, but I was able to get things done before I even got elected, so my name traveled fast. Fast forward, election day came, and the polls closed, and I was down by 6 votes. But as a child of faith, I trusted God's infinite wisdom. I said, I'm getting the work done, I don't need the title, and I was convinced I would never run for public office again. But little did I know there were 23 provisional ballots in that race, and I ended up winning by 7 votes. As a believer, 7 represents perfection, completion, and God. So I know that I'm doing this public service work by His divine intervention, grace, and mercy. That 7 has been very significant in my life. So I want you to remember Chantel Brown, Chantel Brown, Chantel Brown. I say it with the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And remember, early voting starts 7/7, July 7th. So remember, when early voting starts, to vote for me, and the last day to cast your ballot is August 3rd.
Let's give it up for all our
This concludes the discussion show. I'm Larry Estrada, headline I, LIZH, ODJ's Voice Radio. I'm out.
Democratic Club sincerely thank everybody.